Hello there, and welcome to today's Making Change broadcast. I'm Hildy Gottlieb with Creating the Future, and I am so excited to talk about benefit corporations, or B Corps as they are known, today with my guests. For anybody who is watching, if you've got questions or comments or ideas that spark for you, please tweet to the hashtag CTFuture for Creating the Future, CTFuture. And Dimitri will be monitoring, yes, the Twitter stream. I am really excited to introduce three really interesting people today who just get my mind going on this sort of thing. The thing that I was the most excited about our three guests today are that when we think of B Corps, we tend to think of the actual social change companies. Folks who are doing solar, or folks who are doing water purification or rechargeable batteries or a bike shop. But these three have just regular old businesses, and in the worlds that we might not think of, an attorney, an accountant, a banker. And so I am just really thrilled to introduce the three of them, and then I'm going to ask each of you to just share a little bit about the path that led you to choose a B Corp for the work that you're doing, or to work on that in your business. I'm going to start with the longest term first. And I'll just do a quick introduction of each of you, and then I'll ask you, Ellis, to jump in. Ellis Carter is an attorney in Phoenix, Arizona, and she has had B Corp status for her business since 2010. Carolyn Seckler is a CPA working pretty much all over the U.S., based in Phoenix, Arizona, and she has had her status since 2012. And Mark Stevenson is with Pacific Continental Bank in Portland, Oregon. And before that before they actually acquired Capital Pacific Bank, Mark was with Capital Pacific when that was acquired. And they've had B Corp status for just about a year, maybe a year and a half, since 2014. So Ellis, I'm going to start with you because you've been at it the longest. Just tell a little bit about what is it that led you to make this decision?
Well, when I first started hearing about the Benefit Corp movement, I had certainly worked for some large companies who didn't take a social responsibility into consideration in how they ran their businesses in more than a surface way. And so I thought it was an exciting opportunity to improve our practices and to be a socially responsible company. In addition, my practice is almost exclusively representing nonprofits, and so we represent a lot of do-gooders who are trying to change the world, and we wanted to be able to demonstrate that our values were aligned with our clients. And so when I started my own firm, we decided to get B Corp certification. We certainly learned a lot through the process. We got a lot of ideas through the questionnaire qualification process, and we're able to implement some changes and just keep getting better and better.
Terrific, thank you. You've sparked about 4 questions for me, so I can't wait to dig in a minute. Next up, Carolyn Seckler. And Carolyn, just tell us a little bit about what caused you to make that decision. And don't forget to unmute. There you go.
Didn't forget. Hi, I'm Carolyn Seckler. Our firm, like Ellis's, primarily services nonprofit organizations. And I watched Ellis go through the process and decided that that was really in integrity with who we were being as well. So we went through the procedure of, is it my mic working okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. We went through the procedure of going through the checklists, and like Ellis mentioned, it really helped us buff up our standards internally, adopt a lot of new policies and procedures, and it just seems like it's the right thing to do. If I'm just serving nonprofits, to really emulate, and we also were extremely socially responsible anyhow. So it just kind of makes it clearer to people who we're being when we're out in the public.
Wonderful. Wonderful, thank you. And Mark, I know that Capital Pacific was a B Corp starting in January of 2014, and I think I must confess that when I met you and heard that you were at a bank that is a B Corp, I was surprised. it is probably the last place I expected to find a B Corp. So tell us a little bit about what that journey, what led to that.
Yeah, for us it was a little bit circuitous, and it had some precedent. We have, similar to both Ellis and Carolyn, we have a lot of business with nonprofit organizations. We're a community bank. Half of our business was with nonprofit organizations, and so it was kind of the reason we were successful with nonprofits is because it kind of spoke to the DNA of how our bank is wired. There's a lot of people that are naturally inclined to support the community, invested in the community, because that's why they call us a community bank, I think. But we also had developed a track record in sustainability. It was a value that was really strong, an ethic at Capital Pacific Bank. And when we were kind of moving along the sustainability route, we had to, answering one of your questions, Hildy, about what do you want the future to look like, we realized that we needed a strategy and a vision for our sustainability efforts. And so all of our employees kind of went through this process to try to define what the vision and the strategy should be for our sustainability, which also ended up being the strategy and the vision statement for the bank. So that was really an important part of the process. But through that, it was a more holistic approach to sustainability, where we were looking at the sustainability of our clients, of our staff, of our shareholders, which at the end of the day, when you look at that and you think about all those stakeholders whose sustainability that we wanted to protect and preserve and grow, that was B Corp. And it was one of our clients who is a B Corp who said, hey, you guys should consider B Corp. And so that was kind of proposed. I heard that. I learned about what it was, and that kind of embarked us on our process to explore that further, to understand it, and ultimately we became a B Corp in January 2014.
Wow, and at the time you were the CEO of the bank, so you had some pretty good sway in the decision there.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, there's a lot of education that you need to do to make sure our board understood what it is, and importantly, what it isn't.
Go right into that. What is it and what isn't it?
Well, I think what it is clearly a statement of considering the interests of the stakeholder, all your different stakeholders. Some people might refer to that as the triple bottom line, and I think that's a pretty good way to look at it as well. But what it isn't is an excuse not to make money, right? I mean, I think that for a lot of people have had this impression that to substitute the name B Corp for nonprofit, and that nonprofit, of course, means that you aren't making any money, that you're there to perform a social good without considering that other part. I think that's unbalanced. As it turned out for us, and I don't think we would have gotten this approved unless we had been in the top quartile of banks from a profitability standpoint nationally. I don't think I would have had the traction, but when they understood, our board, that the reason that we were successful was because we were taking care of all these stakeholders. If you think about, I think all three of us on the line here are in service industries. When you have a service industry, it's all about the people. And if you don't have people that are engaged and excited and want to be there, then you're not taking care of them, then you're not going to do as well as a service industry. And so I think you can translate that through to your clients. Do you have sticky clients? Do the clients, do they feel that value alignment with you? If you're looking out for them, they're going to look after you. So if you look at, you're taking care of your clients, you're taking care of your staff, and you're taking care of your community, they'll all take care of you, and ultimately your shareholders also benefit.
Yeah, that's is that what you guys are finding? Are you finding it is good for business?
I think that the way we operate, the way we treat people, the way we treat our staff, the way we respond to our clients, the way we treat our neighbors in the community, other vendors that we work with, I think all of that translates. I can't say that just being a B Corp, just the branding aspect makes a big difference, but I think if you really do truly weave that into how you do business, that it does make a difference.
Like Ellis said, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Like Ellis said, I mean, we're finding the same thing, but it's been interesting in the last year or so, people have started to approach us because we're a B Corp. So I thought that was interesting, and that was a deal maker for them with their boards.
Wow. Yeah, and I think that you guys are right in the sense that it's the cherry on top of the sundae. You got to have the sundae. It really is the brand that says, oh yeah, we've got a sundae here. That lets you put the cherry on top. When you talk about stakeholders, who do you guys see as your stakeholders, and what are the mechanisms that you use to make sure that their interests are taken into account?
So clients, obviously, and others in the community. There's a number of policies that you are required to implement that, to be a B Corp. That they're particularly focused on things like a local purchasing policy. So we prioritize local purchasing whenever possible. It's not mandated. If you're going to have to pay a lot more or get a lesser product, ultimately you have to do what's best for your company and your clients. But we certainly, it's in our DNA to look for someone local for suppliers and vendors before we go outside the state or outside the local community. Also, we have a community benefit policy, which is sort of our pro bono policy. So we've codified that and written all of that down. There's a lot of different factors that they look at to be a B Corp. And so you can be sort of not really strong in one and stronger in others, but you have to be giving back to the community. It looks at how you treat the economic development, I guess, for your community. Looks at environmental concerns. Are you near major transportation, or like for us, we're near the light rail. We give all of our employees light rail cards to encourage people to use alternative transportation. So things like that. We buy all recycled materials and things like that, of course, and recycle. And a lot of people buy carbon credits. Bigger companies buy carbon credits and take it much further. So I know Carolyn has. What do you have? Solar and water.
Solar. We've got gray water harvesting. We have fresh fruit that we give to clients with tax returns. All of us work from home for 18 years, so that kind of stuff is really important to us.
Yeah.
And Mark, what do you find in terms of ensuring that the interests of the community are incorporated into the work that you're doing? How does that work at the bank?
Well, I think that what Ellis was talking about in terms of having policies as well as the ongoing assessment, those are good roadmaps for you. I mean, they're disciplined. So one of the benefits that we knew about being B Corp is that it would kind of institutionalize these processes, and the interests of the stakeholders would be preserved. So I think Ellis, you said, or maybe it was Carolyn, that you're just about to go through the process again right now. It's like every 2 years. So that's something that you can look forward to or be afraid of. But if you actually have good processes in place, and that assessment should be basically confirmational of the things that you're doing. We also looked at the assessment as being, there's 200 points that you can have. It's the most points you can get on the assessment. I think it takes 80 to qualify for a B Corp assessment. So I think we are like 104 or something, right? So that means there's a lot of positive change that we can still make. It kind of gave us the roadmap for how we can continue to improve. So I think for us, we didn't have any specific processes in place to say how are we measuring to be accountable, but we did know that ultimately we would be accountable through that ongoing assessment and through having those policies and procedures that would govern.
It's really interesting to me in thinking about the institutionalizing of it. What that speaks to, in my mind, and especially in a larger organization, is that it's not dependent on the sentiments of one person. So if you've got a CEO that is driven by sustainability and driven by community and driven by giving back and being part of, but you then have the next CEO that says, yeah, you know what, we're going to be really focusing just on financial bottom line. All that stuff was nice, which we hear so often. All that stuff was nice that the past guy did, but we're not going to. It really does institutionalize that. It really says that it doesn't matter who's in the seat. This is who we are institutionally. Do people respond to that?
Well, for me, it's like mission centricity, that we talk to our nonprofits about. That we're pretty clear in here about who we are being, and when we make decisions around the fact that we've got this policy in place. And so how is it sustainable? How is it buying local? How, those kinds of decisions. So I think we've been really happy that this, and by me, because I'm the boss of it, I brought it on, but everybody jumped on board with us on it. And we actually found the audit experience to be extremely valuable because we took that opportunity to go back and say, like you were talking about your scores, we said, what else can we do? How else can we raise some scores? We're not manufacturers. We don't have products, so we can't get certain scores in certain areas. But we try every year to maximize a little more when we go through that process.
So what did you do, Carolyn? That was I'd love to know from all of you what you learned from the process that you added, that you changed. What did you learn from it?
Well, we wrote a stronger policy about our purchasing, so we were more conscious of buying local. We've been doing it, but we weren't thinking about it first, and now it's first. We did some better policies around how we deal with our employees. Got some samples from them. I can't remember specifically. Alice, you got any?
Yeah, I think when the exchange came on board, we were able to get real group insurance that we hadn't had before. We've just given people money to go buy their own individual policies, and so that was really helpful. Then, they talked, I think during my audit, they talked about ways to measure or to evaluate employees on as far as their buy-in of all of this, and that all of that should be part of their orientation and their training and their evaluation to further bake it into the DNA of your company. So I thought all of those were good points. And I was a little lazy when I did my initial questionnaire because I'm short-staffed and really busy, and so I hit my number and I was moving on to other things. And when they did the audit, they sent some lovely interns. I think they were bright young men from excellent universities who they were far more motivated than I was, and I think my score went up because they were willing to chase down information I just wasn't willing to chase down. So
so what did it, I'm really curious now about measuring and evaluating how it fits in with the employees. Tell me more about that.
Well, for us, it's a little, I mean, at the time, we only had 3 employees at that time, and so, I mean, all we have to do is sit in a room and have a conversation, and that's, there's no point in designing a big formal orientation. But I felt like it is something worth discussing on a regular basis and building it into a review process or an orientation process. For bigger companies, it makes sense maybe to have a bigger, more formal orientation on it, or build it into, they already have big formal orientations in a bigger company, and to build it into that.
Wow. And Mark, how about you? Yeah.
I think one of the things that we found on the employees is that we did a few things. We did build in some orientation processes for new employees to be able to walk them through kind of everything that was about, the cultural aspects, of sustainability aspects, and why we were certified B Corp and what that meant. I know that one of the outcomes that we expected to have from this was that it would, we would get surveys through the Oregon Business Magazine, conducts the 100 best companies to work for survey, and we'd always scored really well, but hadn't made it on that list. And so after we became certified B Corp, this last year we were number 34 in the state, and which was a testament to say that what we were doing was having results. But that's more of a big picture kind of approach. I do know that the other thing that's happened over time, not just because of certified B Corp, but because of our community endeavors, because of the way that we have built our track record in sustainability, that when I would take new employees to lunch, you ask them, well, why did you decide you wanted to come to Capital Pacific Bank? And invariably, I mean, every single time they would say, well, I really like and value what the bank is doing in sustainability. And you start to pay attention to that, and you realize that with the passage of time, you have more and more employees. The complexion of the organization is continuing to evolve in a place where you have more people that share those values, and that will also therefore translate into the better outcomes of the surveys and better processes, and put us all on the same page, delivering on the mission, if you will.
Do your customers notice any difference?
Oh, well, I think our customers have been the best asset of the bank, but they do talk about it. I mean, I think we already had a very close relationship with our clients, whether they be business clients or nonprofit organizations, prior to certified B Corporation. Although when we announced that we became certified B, it was something that was celebrated by our client base, and so it does mean a lot to them. It's hard to argue with it. I mean, when you understand what certified B Corp means and how the clients fit prominently in that, but they don't. If it was just a statement or an award that you hung out in front of them, unless it resonated with that's how you actually practice, I don't think it would do much good. The fact is that the certified B Corp is really just a reflection of how we were already behaving.
So, tell a little bit about the story in the transition then. Was there any concern, whether it was employees or whether it was the community, when the bank was acquired?
Well, that's a really good question. Well, as you know, that in any type of business transaction, and this is baked into the Articles of Incorporation, you need to consider the effect on those stakeholders when making these decisions. And this was not something we set out to pursue, and it was brought to us, and so we needed to address it. And when we did, I think it was clear to all the stakeholders, and we communicated this significantly, that Pacific Continental Bank acquiring us really did stack up well on each one of these stakeholder fronts. They're also, Pacific Continental is a community bank. In terms of that 100 best companies to work for, Pacific Continental has been on that list for 16 years in a row, and 1 year was number one. So we, every stakeholder we went down, we could find, this last year, Pacific Continental Bank received a national award from the American Bankers Association for volunteerism. I thought we had a good program for volunteerism in place. Where we provided time off for volunteer activities, we promoted it. I thought we had a good program at Capital Pacific Bank, but Pacific Continental Bank really has a much more robust, and vibrant, and well-used program than we had at Capital Pacific Bank. So I think when we looked at that, it was certainly going to be a frustration the day you make an announcement that your bank's going to be acquired. That I would not say is my best day. It's not a day I would choose to want to have again. But we are confident that ultimately the employees would understand that, and the clients would understand that we made a decision that really did take into consideration the interests of all of our different stakeholders.
And how has it been since then?
Well, so you always have two different cultures. I mean, if you have company A, company B, you can't help. There always will be differences in those cultures. The good news is that we're dealing with all good people, and we can work through those cultural integration issues. And the bank and our CEO has been very vocal about the commitment to how we're working together, the commitment to sustainability, and put me in the role of being the Chief Nonprofit and Sustainability Officer, which is a big statement for an SEC reporting bank. And then also to be public about how we are investigating for Pacific Continental Bank the potential to become a certified B Corporation ourselves.
I mean, that title says so much. Chief Sustainability and Nonprofit Officer. I mean, that alone is a statement.
I'm glad you appreciate that, Hilly, because sometimes symbolism matters, and you need to execute on that. But it does send a message. If Pacific Continental Bank is 6 times the size of Capital Pacific Bank, and so there are a lot of people who may not be aware or may not embrace. And you need two important things. I think we could all agree that leadership and management support of these initiatives is imperative. But it has to be, coming from within the staff. And so I think the leadership and the support comes in the standpoint that when you say these things are important, and furthermore, we have an individual who is in this role, it speaks volumes. And so I think that can't be understated.
And Alice, Carolyn, what have you guys found similarly? Because I see you nodding.
Not sure what to add. I mean, we found that clients, appreciate it, that the team's really proud of it. So when we go into the public, they like to be able to state that that's who we are, and it just comes out through all the stuff that we do, that this is, who we are and what we do.
Yeah. I gotta say, I don't focus very much on our B status. I don't publicize it very heavily. I don't talk about it that much. It's just I like the idea, sort of this LEED certification for business idea. I like the accountability of it. I like that it reduces greenwashing. I like that it helps improve your internal practices. But it's not something I've been incredibly vocal about, and so I don't hear about it from clients all that much. I think we have we have a little B on our website.
Carolyn, did you mute?
Yeah, and I think we mention it in our little e-signatures, but that's about it. So.
Well, hopefully we can change that. Hopefully this will change that. Do you guys work with other B Corps? I mean, what are examples that you have seen, if you have, of other B Corps that you think are really good examples of what a B Corp is?
Well, I work quite a bit with Carolyn.
Doesn't count.
We don't have a large number of B Corps in Arizona. The ones that we do have, they're very interesting. I haven't had any opportunities to work with them yet. A lot of them, let's see, Carolyn may have a better idea of who they are. There's the Goodman's Furniture. What is the one that does, Carolyn, that does the software the Salesforce things for nonprofits. I can't think of their name.
Pierre stuff. I can't remember what his is called. I'm sorry.
It's
Good Tech America.
It's the Russian spacecraft. What was it called? Anyway, I'll think of it. Sputnik Moments. And so we've met with some of those people. There's a couple others. We've met with them. We don't have a lot of crossover in what we do, but I would certainly, keep them in mind and prioritize them as vendors because I'm impressed with their overall corporate philosophy.
And how about you, Mark? Do you have many B Corps that use the bank that are customers?
Yeah, there's a pretty strong and vibrant B Corp community in Portland, and a number of them do bank with the bank. I'd say that even broader than that, there's a good community that does gather and share ideas and collaborate, which is what we ask our nonprofit clients to do. So I actually very appreciative of that. You asked about is there a specific B Corp that stands out that I think has importance? There is a chain of natural food stores, a major grocery store chain called New Seasons, and which recently completed an acquisition of a similar chain in Northern California. The reason I think it's important is that it's owned by the most prominent private equity firm in the Northwest, and which again you might say, well, what's up with that? A bank is a B Corp. It doesn't sound very intuitive. You might argue the same thing about private equity. I do know that they have the principal that has that responsibility for this investment. Has a clear understanding about what B Corp is and how it is reflective of the culture that actually exists also at the private equity firm. And so I just think that you need more. One place that B Corp needs to move to is have larger companies, bigger companies, and even public companies that embrace B Corp. Because if it just stays within the small service companies, private companies, I think that we're not going to achieve as much as we really have the potential to. I've heard, and I've seen articles written by the CEO that this is a path that they're on. But Unilever, Jones, Ben and Jerry's, which is a B Corp, but I've understood that Unilever is committed to a B Corp process that could take several years. But if Unilever as a big multinational company could become a certified B Corp, that would be one of the most important things that could happen for that effort.
Wow. Yeah, that's a game changer.
It's funny because here we have large corporations that are B Corps. So it's opposite. When we bring together the people who are B Corps in town, they're big companies, and so there's a disconnect for us because what are they going to do with a CPA firm that just serves nonprofits or a law firm that just serves nonprofits? So it's nice to know they're doing it, and it's nice to share the kumbaya moments about how we decided to do this and what we decided to do, and we all agree it makes sense. But there is still that disconnect. It's just a different kind of a disconnect than you described.
Wow.
But I'm really curious about being bigger companies because that's absolutely not the case in this market, and I had understood that it's pretty prevalent throughout the country that it is smaller companies. Are there any companies that we would recognize there?
These are some international companies that are actually based here, which is interesting. I thought I had the card, but I don't. I'm sorry. It's like Mumzilla or something like that. It's based in Australia, but the principal happens to live in Chandler.
I missed that meeting, so I'm not familiar with that. But
that one and Good Tech America is based out of California. I mean, he lives here, but he's a very large organization that serves the city of Los Angeles, the city of San Diego, and the city.
There are a number of very large companies. Even Etsy, that recently went public, is a certified B Corp. So there are a number of large companies, but we just don't have a critical mass here in Arizona yet. So it's hard to have a lot of cross, pollination when you have such a small group.
You're not suggesting that Portland tends to be a little bit more forward-thinking than Arizona?
Oh, never.
And you don't have to answer that. I want to mention that I do actually work with an accounting firm in Idaho. That's a B Corp. And I have worked with an investment firm out of Colorado that's a B Corp. Colorado has a much denser population of B Corps, and so it's possible to reach for services there. And so when I go to look for services, if there's a B Corp that does it and there's a good fit, I'm going to work with them.
Mhm. Now here's the flip of that question. Um, from what I understand, there's a lot of detail in the application process that may be a little bit difficult for a startup. What recommendations would you guys have for startups who want to start out as a B Corp? Is that harder? What ideas would you have for them?
I would use it as a way to start. I mean, not to me, I'm sorry, Ellis. I would
Go
use
ahead.
it as a way to evaluate where you should be. I think it's a tremendous way to look at what kind of policy should we have in place, what kind of procedure should we follow, what should our mindset be. Maybe you won't initially be a B Corp, maybe you won't score high enough as you're rolling out, but you can plan to a year to 2 years from now be in that position. So best
And I
practice.
think it's hard to score high enough when you have no operating history. And I think if my memory may not be correct on this, and the process keeps changing and evolving a little bit, but I think you have to be in business for some period of time before you can be a certified B Corp. And I can't remember what that period of time is. I think it may be at 6 months or something.
Mark,
But
any ideas that you would have that you would suggest to startups?
Well, I think there's a lot of resources available both through B Lab and for the states that offer, benefit corporation ability to set up as a benefit corporation. I guess I wasn't aware that a startup could not become B Corp. If I think about benefit corporation law, I would assume that that's for setting yourself up as a B beneficial corporation, which would suggest that there would be startups. So that's just news to me.
But when I got started, it was so long ago they didn't really have benefit corporations. So that's a big difference that has evolved since then.
Yeah, and my understanding is that it's not impossible, it's just more difficult because you don't have the operating history.
Yeah, I think that, if you don't believe, if you're a startup and say that you do get a certification, you just be really clear about what your goals are, and that it really does fit with who you want to be. Because if it doesn't, when you get to that next 2-year mark where you're going to get recertified, and if you haven't maintained compliance and you lose your certification, I think there's a lot of brand damage that can occur. So I think my advice would be clear what you want to do, and be committed to doing what it takes to stick to it.
Yeah. I'm curious, Mark, and especially in your organization, because it is so much larger than Ellis's and Carolyn's, has being a B Corp, which I know is just sort of the stamp on top of the culture and the vision that you created, have there been decision points where that has guided, where you've had 2 decisions to make, and where that has clearly guided the decision? I know I'm putting you on the spot to remember.
I think there have been times where it reminds us that we need to look harder for someone locally, or where are we on our pro bono? We have goals here that we need to meet, and so we need to take on something else. So yeah, it has pushed us at times. I think you could also implement those same policies without being a B Corp and without having that. I think the benefit of being certified is that you get audited. And so the public knows that it's not just your own internal review, that there's a third party out there that's looking at what you're doing and certifying that you've done what you said you did.
Do you have any idea how unusual it is to hear the words, the benefit is that you get audited?
Yeah.
I mean, that alone speaks just gallons full. The benefit is that you get audited. That's that constant reminder piece. That's great. Wow. One of the people that asked a question is, what changes, if any, do you think in legislation? And my understanding is that B Corp legislation is state by state. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Is there anything that would make that would help support more and more social enterprises becoming B Corps? Is there anything in the legislation that sort of triggered for you as you were going through it that might help?
I have philosophically, do not feel that the legislation is helpful to sole-owned companies. There's nothing in there other than an extra report that you have to file with the government and calling yourself a benefit corporation. I think it's helpful and useful if you are an investor in a mission-based company, or if you have multiple owners and you want to hold each other accountable, because there's a process for enforcement of the benefit corporation goals and mission. But if you're just a sole owner, I feel that the benefit corporation legislation doesn't really get you anything. And so we have no intentions or plans at the moment to convert to a benefit corporation. I heard recently that there is a plan that licensed B Corps are no longer going to have a choice, if they're going to be forced into that in order to retain their B Corp. So I'll have a decision to make at that point. I just don't like extra government regulation that I don't really get anything back for. So I have to think about that. But since I started, what started out as a lead certification for business is how they described it, and it's really morphed into something else, which I used to consider two things, but it's moving toward everybody's going to have to be under the legislation. So we shall see.
I actually can think of something that I would not want to see happen legislatively, and that I've had some politicians as well as other people in the community ask whether or not there should be tax benefits associated with being a B Corp, and I don't agree with that. I think we should all be on the same playing field.
I think that early on there were some tax benefits. It was a municipality that gave tax benefits. I want to say it was in Pennsylvania or Michigan, I can't remember, and I think that was short-lived. And that was an early goal, but I agree with you that it's not going to help B Corps to get that politically, to get a tax benefit and compete with nonprofits to some degree in that way.
I don't need any tax benefits. I agree with you that there shouldn't be any benefits. We actually are a benefit corp, and we decided to go ahead. I keep talking like there's all these people. It's me. I decided to go ahead and start a benefit corporation, and I did it because I just wanted to keep reiterating the fact that this is who we were. And if there was one thing that I would like to have happen, is anybody who elected to be a benefit corp, that information that we have to put out, that statement each year, was someplace people could find it, so they could see if we were really holding up our end of the deal. Because even though I'm not held accountable by other stockholders, I still want to be held accountable by the community that I serve. And we took a lot of time crafting our document when we wrote it, only to know because of our state that it went in some drawer somewhere. No one will ever see it again. So that's the thing that I would like.
Carolyn, does that mean you're not certified by B Lab?
Both. I am both.
So you're talking about, in addition to, you can go to see your assessment online at B Lab?
No, they can see my assessment online at B Lab, but I have to also write a document for the state of Arizona because I'm also an Arizona benefit corporation.
And you have to be certified to be a benefit corporation. You have to be both. I mean, I think that's a requirement. It doesn't have to be with B Lab, but it has to be something like B Lab, a third-party, objective, outside group.
All right, then I'm lucky I was.
So any other thoughts that you guys have about why this is a good thing? What, as you're thinking about more and more companies becoming B Corps, thoughts that are occurring to you? Because I can't believe that we have already been chatting for over 40 minutes, and it's hard to believe that. Anything that is standing out for you, or anything that you've learned from the conversation today?
Well, when we advise clients, and I think Carolyn does too, about whether to form a B Corp or a benefit corporation or a nonprofit or an S Corp, or how they're going to structure their business. And there's a lot of confusion in the marketplace, and people oftentimes that think that B Corp is sort of a nonprofit, or that they do get special benefits, special tax benefits for it. So there's a lot of education, I think, that needs to take place in that realm. And then what I usually look at is, okay, where do you expect your money is going to come from? Is it going to come, any chance that you'll have investment, like traditional investment, or do you have a better chance raising money from the philanthropic markets? And that's a big deciding factor of whether you should, if you can qualify for 501c3, whether you should be a nonprofit or a for-profit. And then once you figure that out, then they have to figure out you know, does this certification really matter to the market that I'm serving? Is this going to do me any good? Is this really aligned with how I want to do business? Am I going to qualify? And if so, am I willing to, you know, deal with audits and things of that nature and be willing to open up my organization? So I think those are the kind of the thought process that we go through when we're helping people make those decisions.
It's really
a lot of times people come to us wanting to start a B Corp having no idea really what it means or being completely misinformed about what it means.
Carolyn, I see you nodding. Any other thoughts?
No, I mean, that's the same, like she says, that's the same conversation we have with people, not that I form entities, but when they're thinking about being a nonprofit, we talk a lot about whether a nonprofit is really right. Would a corporation really be more appropriate for you? And if you feel like a social benefit, maybe B Corp is an appropriate move for you. You know, because it's a big decision, and both of us talk to people every day about whether or not nonprofit is the right avenue for their concept.
Mm-hmm.
And Mark, I'm sure you're having those conversations as well.
Which conversations?
The conversations about when people are forming businesses.
Oh, well, I mean, not so much in context of people getting ready to form businesses, but I think I would agree that a lot of people do have misconceptions about what it is, and even those that say that they want to pursue it. And so then you're having to constantly try to convey what is B certification, and to have people encourage them to understand why it is that they want to pursue it, and make sure that it's aligned and it's for the right reason.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Okay, I'm going to ask each of you one piece of advice. You've got a B Corp that is 1 year old and wants to just get better and better and better. What's your one piece of advice? I'll start with you, Carolyn.
I'd say review your vendors and make sure that you truly are supporting your local community. Look how you're buying your supplies and your materials, and see if you really are acting local.
Wonderful. Ellis, how about you? One piece of advice.
I'd say periodically take out your initial assessment and all the things that you said you were doing and you were going to do, and on all the things you hadn't quite gotten to yet, and chip away at that list.
Great. And Mark, how about you?
That's exactly what I would say too. I'd say take that assessment, see where you have room to improve, and then prioritize and pick one or two. But I think that through any process of becoming a certified B Corporation, it can be very daunting. For us, it was very helpful to have a lot of helping hands and a lot of people that were championing individual parts of this effort. But it can be daunting. It can be very complex. And so once you are a certified B Corporation, picking one or two high gain areas and really focusing on delivering on those, you'll continue to move the dial as time goes on.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you guys so much. I could just listen to you guys all day long, and I've got a whole ream of questions that's coming up for me that I may just ask you individually and post them on the blog. But thank you so much for sharing your time with us today. This has really been informative, and I really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us.
Okie doke. Bye-bye.
Bye.